corals are getting pale, they're losing their color due to the rising sea temperature. And I thought, my God, this is our existential crisis. Solving that should be the priority for all of us. I'm a Malaysian, born and bred in Kuala Lumpur. My school was literally under KL Tower. And then after my graduation, I was all over the place. And I was given an offer to move to Singapore by an accelerator called Antler, which is a venture capital firm. Even then, I was quite clear. I wanted to do something to do with climate. Along with myself, 3 hours co-founded Reclimate. We fundraised. We got our first check from Antler. We thought, we made it in life. Little did we know what was waiting for us.
Hey, Yovind, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Very well. How are you, Jay?
I'm good, thanks, Yovind. Look, thank you so much for making some time to come to this interview. I'm really looking forward to explore about your journey and especially why you started Reclimate, right? And
Sure.
before we jump in to the interview, do you mind giving a bit of an information about yourself to our audience?
Sure. So, I'm a Malaysian, born and bred in KL, Kuala Lumpur. City boy. My school was literally under KL Tower, so that's how city it can be. I studied my degree in finance in University of Reading, and then after my graduation, I was all over the place. I worked as a minister's officer, a minister of transport in Malaysia, quite short bit. After that, I went into finance. Was in PayPal. I was doing risk analyst. After that, I ended up going to an agricultural company, an organic agriculture. I was actually an apprentice to the chairman of that company. He was one of the
Mm-hmm.
founders of Air Asia, so kind of like my mentor. He put me through various companies that he owned, education and whatnot. COVID hit, and Air Asia was badly hit. So was he. So had to downsize the company. I was laid off. Didn't know what to do. Eventually, I was hired by a very very small Malaysian startup. We were in the prop tech scene. I was leading the business development initiative, quickly rose the ranks and became the country manager in the middle of COVID. So we grew the company, with little fundings. We were working with hotels and convention centers who barely had any business to go with. So grew the company, fundraised, grew the inventory, grew the team, hiring, firing, and everything. And at the end, we managed to get it sold off to another buyer. And I was wondering what to do really. Should I go back to corporate? Should I work for another startup? And I thought maybe that's the time for me to go into entrepreneurship and start a company. And I was given an offer to move to Singapore by an accelerator called Antler, which is a venture capital firm. And they just told me, move for 3 months. We'll pay you a very small stipend to live in Singapore. And Singapore is one of the most expensive cities in the world.
Yeah.
So barely was able to live, but managed to pull through about 2 months. But even then, I was quite clear. I wanted to do something to do with climate because I knew, climate was booming. And I'm
Yeah.
a diver. I'm an avid diver. So if you're a diver, I've been diving for 10 years. The underwater world is one of the most hit part of the world due to the climate change. And over the last 10 years, I've been going back to the same dive sites, and you can see the decolorization of corals. Corals are getting pale. They're losing their color due to the rising sea temperature. You see more and more fishes infected, and all these things was happening. And I thought, my God, this is our existential crisis, right? So solving that should be the priority for all of us. So I saw the real challenge, real problem to solve, and it completely made business sense. For any entrepreneur, solving problem is the key thing, right? And the bigger the problem, the bigger the market is for you. So it makes a lot of sense in terms of solving problem. It made a lot of business sense. So the next question is, what do we do? So as I was doing this accelerator program, I met two co-founders, completely different background. One guy was an environmentalist. He was the guy that would go on the streets and protest against government policies, a Filipino guy. And another co-founder was a lady. She was an Indian national from India, but living in Singapore. Two brilliant fellas. One, the guy, he worked in environmental attributes companies. My other co-founder, she worked in Morgan Stanley and whatnot. So really, really bright kids, right? So along with myself, 3 hours co-founded Reclimate. We fundraised. We got our first check from Antler. We thought, that was it. We thought, we made it in life. Little did we know what was waiting for us. So we took off. The moment we finished fundraising, I moved back to Malaysia. Uh, my other co-founder moved back to Philippines, and my other co-founder, she lived in Singapore because she was married to her husband who lives out of Singapore. And we wanted to do this thing where we help electric vehicle charge point operators to access carbon markets, because we knew Southeast Asia was so much behind in the adoption of EV, and we thought EV was the next boom. We wanted to help all these EV charge point operators to access carbon markets so EV business can become more viable. But
Mm.
whenever I attended any conferences, I would be shot down left, right, centers. People would sit down with me over lunch and ask me, you guys are just outright greenwashing. Is this even ethical? That's the kind of question that was put to me. And I never even came from sustainability background. So there was times where I would take food, sit on a table, and I would just leave the table because people would question me, all kind of technical stuff, outright humiliate me. And it was really, really challenging. But
Wow.
what happened was 6 months after we fundraised, and we thought because we had our first check, because none of us were entrepreneurs, right? We thought, we're going to continue fundraising and whatnot. But then the reality hit. So on the sixth month, we ran out of money, right? We hit the financial runway. So what happened was my first co-founder left the company, left with just
Oh,
2 hours. And we had no money in the account. We had no viable business plan. All the clients that we were talking to were on enterprise clients. We're talking to the likes of like energy companies of Singapore, multi-million dollar companies, but they would take at least a year to close the deal. What do we do in between? So we tried fundraising, but nobody wanted to give a check without any early revenues or anything like that. So we were left with the question, what do we do? So eventually, cut long story short, both of my co-founders left the company. I was left alone in the company back in Malaysia, no employees, nothing in the account. I had like $20 in the account. So at that point, I had a question to ask, right? It was 6 months. I thought, okay, you know what? 6 months, I got paid. Let me just leave the company, go back. That would be the most logical thing to do. Or the other thing is, it was a blank check. I could rewrite our fate. So I was thinking, what should we do? So it was a very tough time. It took me about 2 to 3 months. I was really wondering what to do. No viable options out there. So funny enough, I got invited to this huge festival in Singapore called Green Tech Festival, GTF, Green Tech Festival Singapore, organized by Audi and all the big boys in town. And they would do it
mhm.
usually in London, in Germany, and Singapore for Malaysia. So Singapore for APAC region. So I asked one of my longtime friend. He actually co-founded another startup in the same accelerator program. And I said, he was a fellow Malaysian. He has been an entrepreneur for a while. So he had more of a reality check. So I said, you know what? We want to take down a trip to Singapore. We go to this Green Tech Challenge, Green Tech Festival. Have a look and see what's going on there. So both of us went. We explored a few things, and that's where we found out about carbon removal technologies, where
Right.
projects actually removes carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So we took a random trip. It was just a day trip actually. We took a midnight bus, arrived in Singapore in the morning, went for the festival. Evening, we took another ride back to Malaysia. 6 hours in, 6 hours in, 6 hours out. And
Mm.
then, the next thing I asked him, dude, you want to do this? And then he was like, I have no clue what this is all about, but seems interesting. Let's do it. That's just like that. We shook hands. I said, and then he asked, how much do you want to give me equity in this company? Because I'm new here, right? But you've been doing this for a year now. Maybe 70-30, 60-40. I said, you know what? Let's just do it 50-50.
50
Um,
50.
he thought I was being generous, but I was being cunning because I want him to have enough skin in the game so he struggles as much as I do.
Is it still?
Yeah, he's still
Is,
in. So he's my
okay.
co-founder,
Yeah.
right? It's two of us now. His name is Tani. So we've been doing that for now. So on the 2nd of January, I think, right after New Year, we took a trip to a farm in Malaysia, owned by my ex-mentor Aziz Baka, who's one of the founders of Air Asia. He had a 100-acre farm. We started doing this biochar. We had no clue what is it all about. We had no money. We said, let's just try. You can sit down and do all this desktop research, but until you get out there and you fail and be ready to fail, you won't know what is it all about, right? So we tried. We tried doing it. We got a small, 4 or 5 months into the journey. We got a small grant from a Malaysian government. We started doing it. Within a year, we launched our second project in Sri Lanka. Without even we knew, we were already in the regional growth mode. So now, about 1.5 years into the journey, we already have active projects in Malaysia, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, and we're launching into Cambodia. And the one project into Malaysia has now grown into four. Next year, we're projecting to grow that four projects into 14 to 15 projects in Malaysia, 3 to 4 projects in Indonesia, two in Sri Lanka, and 3 to 4 projects in Cambodia. Team now has grown from two co-founders, two clueless co-founders to about 10. We are growing that team further. Got another various fundings and signing a few multi-million-dollar deals for the offtakes of the carbon credits.
Wow.
That's pretty much where we started and where we
That's
are right now.
Oh, that's a pretty interesting and a tough journey you guys have had. But looks like it. You guys are going in the right direction and
Yeah,
seeing some good results as well. That's great. That's great. Hey, while you're talking, you mentioned about you got a little bit of a grant from Malaysian government,
correct.
and and you said you had no clue what's biochar or biomass or biofuel is, and you decided to let's roll up our sleeves and let's get our hands dirty.
Correct.
How did you convince the government? Because you had no clue. You guys are not into the business. How did you get the grant?
One is it was unique. We were the first mover in Malaysia. I think Southeast Asia, or even Asia to a certain extent, all you have to do is do what is being done in Europe and US done successfully. You just have to emulate that back here, right? You don't have to. So you'll pretty much be the first mover here. Number one. Number two is, I guess, the conviction and passion. I think even until today, that's what really sells. If you're able to convince the other party, if you're able to share your passion, I think people would want to go into that journey with you. I think when I pitched to that panel, they were able to feel that, and they said, you know what, these guys have so much belief in what they do. I think it's worth taking that risk. So it wasn't really. I mean, we had a project to begin with to sell, right? So it wasn't like they wrote a check just based out of a pitch deck or based out of a business plan. We had operation going on, but in a very small scale. We had two laborers. We were paying them like the minimum wage, and so we had something to show. Based out of that, we got that grant.
You said you started with three founders, including yourself,
Hmm.
and two of them worked out because the funding, the fund you raised, finished end of in 6 months' time, if I'm
Correct.
right. And then you had $20 or $50 left in your wallet, and you decided, okay, should I proceed further or should I just give up and move on to a corporate job? At that point of time, you had a green tech challenge or festival invite.
Yeah.
Well, and then you found your new partner. But the question I have is, how did you start this new? How did you reignite Reclimate again with zero funds? You didn't have funds unless you got some funds from Malaysian government. Because to pay the wages,
Yeah.
was it being paid using Malaysian government grant or from your own pocket? How did that happen?
So for my own lifestyle, I had to go bare minimum, right? So that I had to use up my savings. I had to, truth to be told, even borrow money from parents and whatnot. I had to bare minimum, like live up bare minimum, right? Whatever it takes just to keep life going. In terms of Reclimate itself, again, I had to go and cut a deal with the farm owner. I said, look, if this takes off, I'm going to give you a lot of revenue I'm going to give you a lot of revenue share. Little, we need very little. I just want to prove the concept. Workers, can you pay them first? I'm very convinced that we will be able to generate something in the next 6 to 7 months. In the meantime, could you please pay them first, and then we'll reimburse you later. So all these kind of deals, I had to deal with everybody and say, can you advance for us? Can you do this? Can you do that? Can you go in this? Take a bit of risk here, and if we prove something, we'll be able to give something back to you. So it was really a lot of convincing of everybody. So to answer you, that's how. So for the workers, because the workers were not hired by us, it was hired by the farm. Now we
Yeah,
pay them, but in the first 6 to 7 months until we secured the grant, they were paid by the farm owners themselves, and then we
which is the
reimbursed.
AirAsia CEO, right? He's the farm owner.
Co-founder, not CEO, one of the board members. Yeah.
Board members. Okay, so wow, how did that happen? Do you know them, those farm owners?
Yeah, so
Because
remember the mentor I told you about, Aziz Baka? So he was that guy, right? So I could
right,
convince an absolute stranger. You always have to find your friends and family first, right, to get them to go on this journey with you before you get somebody else. So he was the first guy I went to. Yeah,
so he was the client. I mean, on a paper, he will be your first client.
exactly. On
Um,
paper, he will be our first client, but now he's on our advisory board. And
right.
imagine this man, he's a 70-year-old man, came from a music background. He was a BMG Malaysia CEO, and then he started AirAsia. And he had a deep passion for agriculture, and he's that guy that you know the stigma is that older people are often not very open to new ideas. But he's this guy that if you go to with him on a new technologies, he's just like, let's try it out, let's do it. He's that kind of very driven man. So when I shared this to him, and because he was in an airline industry, which is so-called one of the largest polluter, he understands how important it is for companies to become more sustainable. So in that sense, it was quite an easy sell for me.
When you were working on the farm
Yeah,
with no clue,
yeah.
what was one assumption you had about climate tech or biochar or biomass that turned out wrong?
Ah, I thought that when you had biochar projects, uh, buyers of the carbon credits would come knocking their doors. I was very wrong. I was very, very wrong in that sense. There was a lot to do with just then producing biochar. The initial story was, oh, the moment you start an operation, somebody will come and buy your credits. Then the next thing they told us, the moment you complete your audit, somebody will come and buy your credits. The next question was, the moment you issue your first credit, somebody will buy your credits. The story just kept going, but nobody came though until we issued like 200 credits. Only then we were managed to sell the first 100 credits. So
Wow. Right.
yeah, because the story was, people, when you talk to it is a small industry, but the more you talk to people, the more stories you learn. Then they'll be like, oh no, not really, you need to have 10,000 credits for somebody to buy. Oh no, you can't be in Malaysia, it's not a very low income country, there's lack of social, so the story just keeps changing. But knew that carbon removal was very sought after. We were looking at the markets very closely. We were looking at the stories, the data, and whatnot. So we were
Okay.
convinced that we just thought. At one point, I asked my co-founder. We said, "Do we go on because nobody's buying our credits? We still haven't generated revenue. We're just living off grants." It was a tough conversation. I can look very cool, but I can be very, very emotional at times because this is my baby, right? I built it up from nothing, and then we said, you know what, let's give it a year. I think something will come out of it. And true enough, we managed to sell our first batch. Then we knew we were in the right direction.
Right direction. So, w- how long did it take for you to see revenue coming in? Is it after
A
six
year,
months or
a year.
after
It
1 year?
thought it was 6 months, but it took us a year.
So in the meantime, you requested asked the farm owners to look after the employees.
Correct. But after the grant came in, we were also able to reimburse
Are
some
you
of
able
the
to?
cost. Yeah.
So the question I have is, so 1 year you have some grant. It's not huge. It's little, I believe, some grant, and you have been doing this process for almost a year.
Yeah.
How do you deal with uncertainty and slow progress? What was running in your mind?
Yeah.
How did you cope? How
It,
do you know that after, okay, I'm going to see light at the end of the tunnel, but when there will be days you'll be questioning yourself, imposter syndrome kicking in.
yeah.
How was it that? How did you deal that?
Exactly. In fact, until today, right? This is such a dynamic industry. Things changes every day and night.
Mm,
So until today, we're not very sure what happens and whatnot. But it's just that at the end of the day, what you stand for, that really matters. What do we stand for as a company? What's our North Star? That's what I always question ourselves. It's not easy because after a year, like I told you, we even the progress that we made, the revenue we made, it wasn't that huge, right? So we evolved. We said, okay, if the problem is the buyers of the carbon credits want to see more social impact, then should we launch in a country where this would be much needed? So we looked at Sri Lanka because Sri Lanka was badly hit by the financial crisis. There was a
mm,
sudden ban in chemical fertilizers, right? So farmers didn't know what to do. So the biochar itself was so sought after. The social element was so present. So we were able to go in and launch a project. Then Indonesia, it's a huge market. It's the largest market in Southeast Asia. So it made sense for us to venture into Indonesia. Today, we have gone beyond biochar. We are now launching the Southeast Asia's first enhanced weathering project. It's a bit technical, but in short, basically, it's where you take a certain type of mining waste and you turn it into soil amendment and you give it to degraded agricultural soil. The soil will become more fertile and it will start capturing carbon. Essentially, same like
wow.
biochar, which is turning
Okay.
agricultural waste into carbon capture. You are using
Yep.
mining waste now to turn it into carbon capture. So we're doing that the first in Indonesia, in Southeast Asia. We're doing it in Indonesia now. We've hired a local team in Indonesia, which we never thought we'll do because we thought our business model is always to partner with a local partner, right? That's what we did in Sri Lanka. That's what we even do in Malaysia. Like when we go to
Mm,
other districts in Malaysia, we never hire our own people. We always partner with the local people there because they know the local farmers better. They are
yeah,
able to convince the farmer better. But in Indonesia, we thought we're not gonna waste our time trying to look for partners. Let's just do it ourselves. So we have hired a local partner there, and we're doing it ourselves. We have hired a local team there, and we're doing it ourselves.
good, good. Do you mind sharing to our audience what is your revenue figure right
Uh,
now
Correct. So
annually?
currently we we are at a turning point. I can't disclose full information, but by January, we'll be able to hit a booked revenue of over US dollars. That's the number we are looking at. But this month we are concluding a very important deal, which once it's done, we'll be able to make the huge announcement in January. At that
Cool.
point, we'll be able to surpass dollars in booked revenue.
That's fantastic, right? So the day you had literally you had zero revenue coming in, now you're hitting. And how long it took for you win? Like
Uh,
in
so I would say from January 2024 is when we
almost, yeah,
January 2024 is when I told you the second or third day of January we went to the farm to kickstart. That was in 2024. That was with me and my new co-founder.
almost 2 years.
Yes,
Let's put it
almost two
that way.
years.
Yeah, almost 2 years you're hitting a. So that is revenue coming in, and what about the profit margin? Have you worked out the profit in terms of that will be the company will be doing? Because the reason why I'm asking this question is, yes, you can generate X amount of revenue, but if you don't control your expenses or cost,
Yeah,
you know what I mean, you will go back to the same situation where you ran out of the funding you initially raised.
yeah.
So that's why I want to understand that aspect. What changed? Are you careful now? Are you cutting your cost, making sure that you don't go back to the same situation?
Correct. So exactly right. We learned our lessons. We keep it very very lean. The operations. We make sure that all of us do everything under the sun. There's nobody looking into one or two aspects. We really empower our team to do everything above and beyond. So the team our team works really hard. So we keep them lean and we expose them to new things. We don't intend to hit profitability until 2028. That is a conscious decision we have made internally. We want to
Oh,
grow. Yes, we want to grow exponentially. I think we have proven to the market that our solution can work very well with different types of crops, different types of region. That's why everybody asks us, why aren't you just focusing on one or two markets? Why are you growing into 4 or 5 different countries? Because we wanted to prove that this is a replicable, scalable model, right? So our solution sits so well and the problem is so common across the region. I don't think we should stop the growth. So instead of hitting profitability and sacrificing growth for profit until 2028 we want to continue growing 30-40x year on year. That's our personal goal internally. uh, After we capture the market, then we will look into profitability, but until then we want to grow and have presence pretty much the entire Southeast Asian region and a little bit of South Asia. We even have partnership requests into Africa now. That's also
oh
we
wow.
yeah we're looking into Tanzania, but we won't go into it until end of next year. We want to still focus on
Cool.
Southeast Asia first.
So you're getting paid. You're getting still paid from the by the business, right?
Yeah, of
Each
course.
one of you who is employees, yeah. But
Correct.
the profits are not been worked out or not been calculated until 2028.
Yes.
Why 2028? Why 3 years or 5 years in total? I believe.
Yeah. So we have our own growth plans internally, our own growth targets. We believe by 2028 we will have few different things. First of all, we are now transitioning into the initial idea was to turn waste into biochar. This year we are turning waste into heat recovery and biochar, meaning agricultural mills they always require heat to dry their feedstock, to dry their produce and whatnot. So let's just put it this way: heat is a commodity in many of agricultural business because they would take tea farms. They would want to dry their tea leaves to produce tea, right? Tea bags. Uh, Same goes to rice mills and whatnot. So this year we are now recovering heat as well as another value added product from waste. Next year, we'll start producing renewable energy, biochar, heat, and carbon credits from that same waste. So we are essentially growing our value that we derive from 1 ton of waste. Back then, 1 ton of waste equivalent to half a ton of biochar. This year, half a ton of waste, 1 ton of waste equivalent to X kilojoules of heat and certain tons of biochar and carbon credits. So next year, we'll be
Right.
generating certain megawatt hours from the waste, biochar, carbon credits, and heats. So our job here is now to derive as much as value possible from that 1 ton of waste. So we will be able to achieve that by 2028. Second thing, we'll be able to have presence in 70 to 80% of Southeast Asian countries by 2028. So we have all these targets that we have set internally. We are much more strategic now. Back in the days, it was like cowboy, right? Just run around, just catch as much as business possible, just grow as much. But after we came to a certain point, me and my co-founder said, now we have a proper strategy meetings every month. We set our targets. We do a check. Where are we financially? Where are we in terms of BD? Where are we in terms of strategy? So we do all these things very strategically these days. How are we hiring? How are we, how is the team productivity like and all that? So we are more strategic these days. We have clear targets, growth targets. So we think 2028 Q4 is where we'll be able to hit all of this.
Going back 2024, January, you started with your co-founder on a farm with no clue what this is, but you still had some sort of hope that this will take you somewhere. After 1 year, you started to see some results coming in. No results after 1 year. What would have done?
Yeah. We actually had the discussion, actually, me and my co-founder. I mean, I think I can be frank here. We're all getting old. We are moving away from that, bachelor life, living in your parents' basement or whatever. And, responsibility is starting to catch up, right? So we had that discussion. What happens, Then we said, you know what? Let's shut down and move on. We have to make that tough decision, right? How long, there is all this passion, dreams, and ambition is nice to have, but at some point you need to have that reality check. And in that sense, my co-founder is so much complimentary to me because he's that guy. He's that guy that wouldn't shy away from having the tough discussion. He would say,
Wow.
all this because we won so many awards, so much of recognition from Shell, from Microsoft, from Grow Asia. This next 2 weeks, we'll be getting award from another conglomerate in Malaysia. All that is very nice to have, nice to post on your LinkedIn. But at the end of the day, he's the guy who will knock on your head and say, "Yeah, you won all that, but so what? Your revenue is still shit, right?" So what? You won this award. So I'm the guy who'd get carried away by all this fancy stuff, right? So we had that discussion, and good thing that I have, he always have that reality check, and so we had the discussion, but we're able to show much more better traction. We are now the company, the go-to company when it comes to biochar and carbon removal in Southeast Asia. So we managed to check and say, okay, we are in the right direction. So let's continue and let's give it another year. So we always have the discussion.
So you don't have any competitors right now in Malaysia
In Malaysia, no. Uh, not in
globally,
Malaysia, not in Sri Lanka. I mean, in Sri Lanka, we are the largest right now by projection. There's another project. In Cambodia, we'll be the largest as well.
right? Malaysia, no, but in Singapore and other countries, but in neighboring countries, Singapore, you have any competitor?
Not really. So we are somewhat hybrid of Singapore, Malaysia as well as a company. So
Right.
Singapore doesn't have any biochar projects as well.
What has been the hardest part of building a climate tech company? Other than funding and all the journey you had, what else you discovered?
Yep. Few things actually. Climate tech and being a climate tech company in Southeast Asia, that's double the problem, right? Nobody looks at Southeast Asia as a region, right? When it comes to Asia, people look at China, India. That's about it. Because the market, and to be fair, it's huge market, India and China, right? Nobody looks at Southeast Asia as one market. I'm such a proud Southeast Asian, right? For me, it's so much in my DNA. Wherever I go, I always carry the Southeast Asian flag. But the reality is, Southeast Asia is 10 countries still. It's not like EU, right? Even you go to Hong Kong,
Mm,
it's different culture, different expectation. When you go to Singapore, people are different. Indonesia,
yep.
people are different, right? So we are still fragmented in that sense. Nobody looks at Southeast Asia to fund projects. Nobody understands what climate tech is. To add to all to that, there's a lot of misunderstanding of what climate tech is. So you need to educate the market what is climate tech, what is carbon removal. You need to convince the investors that Southeast Asia is a viable and an attractive region to invest in. There's a potential there. So there's a lot of education to be done, and
Right.
that's a continuous process for us. Every day we are educating people, stakeholders about what we do. So much value there, so much impact can be made, and still build a huge business despite having all that impact.
I wanted to understand before you expand globally, the focus should be enhance your business or scale up your business in-house first, which is in Malaysia, which I know which you're doing right now. By 2028, you're aiming for 70 to 80%. Why not focus in Malaysia before set up your foundation strong before jumping out? What what was the reason jumping out to Sri Lanka and Cambodia?
Good question. I was actually asked by one of the government agencies recently because they thought that us, by expanding outside of Malaysia, we are sort of like not focusing on Malaysia, not sort of lifting up Malaysia. The truth is, it was very strategic. It By us focusing on other region, it did not mean that our growth in Malaysia would slow down. No,
Mm,
that's not the case. Number one. Number two is Malaysia is not an agricultural powerhouse. We are going so much
okay.
into industry, right? We are going into data centers. We are going into aircraft parts, semiconductor and whatnot. Number one. Number two is the cost of business. If when I sell my carbon credits, I'm selling it in US dollars. And the cost of business in Indonesia, in Sri Lanka, and Cambodia is, one fifth of what we do in Malaysia. So the margin for my partners, for us, is much more interesting in any of the other countries in Southeast Asia, bar Malaysia and Singapore. The margins are much more healthier, right? So that's
Uh,
so it was very strategic even when we looked at other markets. It wasn't just to show off and say, oh, Reclimate is now in 5 countries. It's nothing like that. It was very strategic in terms of we looked at margins, we looked at the scale that we'll be able to hit in Indonesia or Sri Lanka or Cambodia or any other markets versus what we can do in Malaysia.
that's interesting. Thanks for opening it up. When you said margin, so you still treated Reclimate. Yes, you are adding a value to the environment. You are trying to um, help the government and all the community as well, but still you treat it as a business to make sure you are making profit end of the day.
Of course, that's very important
But
because you can't be
that's
a dead hero. We can't be that story like
that's
remember
good.
that remember that company used to be Reclimate. They did so much well, but well, yeah.
I have a question. Now, someone who's listening right now, what advice do you have for someone in a stable job? They're happy, they're earning um, good pay in the 9 to 5, but feeling stuck or restless. But they have an idea. They're saying, but they don't know what to do. I mean, they're just happy in the job. What advice would you give it to them?
Yeah, I think first to begin with, if you're already happy in your job, then why make a shift, right? I know there's always this sort of this very probably it's a very Asian thing, right? Or I want to start a business because I want to work for myself. The truth is,
Mm,
you never do that. My time doesn't belong to me at all. The last person dictates my time is me. Who dictates my time? My colleagues, my clients, my investors, everybody but me, right? So that's a fake thing, right? So the time is not going to belong to you. At the beginning, you are going to be underpaid and overworked.
mm,
But
mm.
I always ask myself, why am I spending 18 hours at work? But that's truly because I love it. I really do love my work, right? So I spend a lot of time in it. Take a calculated risk. Uh, Too many people are blinded by their own idea. Love the problem, not the idea. Be ready to pivot. you know, Compared to where I started off, I thought I'm going to sit in my fancy office, talk to the big billion-dollar companies, sell my idea about EV charge point operators. Now I'm in the field sweating and getting burned by the sun alive. I'm going to because I visit my sites very often, right? Every few days or every few weeks I'm in site. I'm flying around every 2 weeks. So be ready to pivot. And I wouldn't have been able to pivot if I was so stuck on to my EV idea.
Mm,
It never came from me. It came from my old co-founders anyway. So so those are some of the things I could think of. But go into entrepreneurship for the right reason. I've seen so many entrepreneurs who never lasted more than 6 months. Go for it. It's not going to be an easy journey. Be prepared to struggle, but we all hope that the ending can be really nice.
right. One mistake new founders make. what it is from your
Uh,
experience?
being carried away too quickly. When I first fundraised with Antler, within 2 weeks, my inbox was flooded with emails from so many VCs asking, so-called expressing interest to invest. But how many people actually would write check? At least in my case, it was zero. I spent so much time, talking to all these VCs, sitting with them, spending hours going through my business. In other words, stripping myself naked to everything, your business model, idea, everything. But the truth is, when it comes to actually writing check, there's not many people out there. So don't get carried away by all these things. So many people talk. So many people say a lot of the things that you want to hear, but that
Mm,
may not always translate into an actionable item for you, or may always end up being something important for you. So don't get carried away. Always come back and view your business as a business. Where are we in terms of revenue, traction, and so on and so forth?
wonderful. Well, now, one mindset shift every beginner needs what before they start a business.
Um, One mindset shift, I guess, the way you look at work. Um, you know, when you're working for somebody else, you can clock out at 6 p.m. and go to your tennis and have your dinner date and go back to your bed at 10 p.m. or whatever. Uh, Being an entrepreneur, your work just doesn't end. It gets so you become one with your work, right?
Okay. Yep. Interesting. I've heard that from everyone. Yep.
Yeah, you get emails at 10 p.m. and your sleep is gone because you're dealing with America and you get a bad news, right? So you become one thing, and it becomes sort of like an existential crisis because if my company shut down, I go down with the company, right? Unlike if you're working for somebody else, then it's easy to. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it just becomes harder. You become one with
Mm,
the company, so that's quite a shift that I.
so be ready to get burned.
Yeah.
And that's really will happen. Now, where you the day you started with this idea and where you are right now, I believe looking back, yes, you had a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of tough times, but these would have all just faded away because the company is growing, you're adding value to the community and stuff. But if if there's an opportunity for you to scale up, if there's an opportunity someone wants to acquire this business, would you be keen or would you want to still keep it um, and be a solo entrepreneur in the sense with your co-founder? What I'm trying to say is, if you have done the best with the business, it is growing right now, and you're getting an opportunity. Would you take it or would you just leave it?
Not at this point, but at some point,
Mm,
sure. But why I say not at this point is because there's so much to unlock. We are nowhere
mm,
close to that, right? So,
right.
that's science that shows that. I mean, for yourself, you spend so much time in this business. You're not there yet. There's so much
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
unlock, discover.
Understand. Hey, Yovind, thank you so much. It's been a wonderful 40 minutes. We discussed a lot of questions, your journey, and thanks for being so transparent and vulnerable, sharing your Reclimate journey and the tough times you've gone through. So this would have been very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, JP. It's my first podcast. I have another one coming up, but they delayed it, so you're the first. Very nice.
That's good. I'm honored. Thank you so much.